Welcome back to the Crash Course podcast. My name is Craig Crash Collins, joined as always by Brandon Scott, otherwise known as B. Scott. We're back after a 2-week hiatus. We decided to take a little bit of a break. As a lot has happened. We got NASCAR back, so a little bit of a semblance of sports. The Last Dance documentary finished, which I have not watched, but B. Scott has. We'll talk about that here a little bit later.
UFC. The UFC is fighting.
Which, by the way, so I don't know. Do you watch Last Week Tonight with John Oliver at all?
I do not. No.
Okay, so he was talking about kind of what we're going to talk about on the podcast today, which is how we return to sports and what kind of that's going to be what tonight's podcast is about. Is going to be about basically how all the sports are working towards getting back, and that's basically what his show is about this weekend. And he was talking about Fight Island, and he was like, why there were so many other clever names you could have come up with, that one of which being UFC, like SEA. And I was like, that is incredible. I wish it was called, I would watch it if it was called UFC.
Hey, it was just good to be able to see something back. That was one of the first things that came back without fans. Unless you are a fan of the WWE,
Yep.
They were holding all of their events in their training facility down in Florida. So, but hey, the UFC and the WWE were leading the way.
Yeah.
Didn't have any other way, I guess.
Exactly, and it's a lot of good stuff going on right now, and that's what the podcast is going to be about tonight. We're going to talk about, what the NFL is possibly doing, which there's a kind of a breaking news story, not a huge one, but one that came out before we started recording tonight. We're going to talk about the NBA. We're going to talk about Major League Baseball, and we're also going to talk about NASCAR coming back, as well as, like I said, The Last Dance. So a lot of stuff going on, B. Scott. Now, one thing related to the Colts before we get into things here, I don't know if you saw the alert that I got, or if you got the same alert that I got, where it said that Phillip Rivers could possibly be playing. Like, the Colts basically have acknowledged that Phillip Rivers could be here for the long haul. That's not the long haul, but I mean more than just 1 year, like everybody seemed to have thought. So does that make you like how does that make you feel about like the situation with the Colts and the quarterback situation? Because that actually makes me feel a little bit better about Jacob Eason. We talked about, I talked about the fact that I'm not super huge on Project QB. So now that he's, going to be here maybe 2, maybe 3 years, that seems like a good gestation period. Yeah, it's kind of a little bit freaky because you're like, oh my gosh, he's going to be kind of just thrown out there after 3 years, and hopefully he's great. Hopefully, he does well. But now I'm feeling a little bit better, especially because it almost seems like you can kind of build these young players behind these veterans and kind of set yourself up for a better thing, like even after Rivers is gone. So I'm actually even more excited by that fact, and like regarding Eason, than maybe I was if he was going to be here for 1 year and then retire.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. The fact I'm not too surprised that he is talking about wanting. I mean, he was already talking about wanting to play more than 1 more year anyways. So it makes sense to play it here in Indy. But if you look at the number, we could have had Tom Brady for the exact same amount of time, for the exact same amount of money. But hey, that's water under the bridge. Phillip Rivers is the quarterback now. And, I feel like this team, if they don't have a run in them this year because of how young they are at the wide receiving core, the following season, definitely. And I think you're also seeing this news break about Phillip Rivers playing potentially multiple years in Indy before hanging it up, because there is still some uncertainty if the season will even be played this next year. So you don't want to be like, well, we had him for 1 year and we didn't even play. Now what? And so I think that's kind of what they're looking at as well. But hey, I'm okay with it. I mean, it gives, like you said, it gives Jacob Eason more time to learn, and it keeps the Super Bowl window potential open for the Colts a little bit while longer, especially now you're hearing that T.Y. Hilton wants to be a Colt for life, and ultimately they're hoping to get that deal done. And then you look at the young players that are up and coming. So it's a good move. You definitely need that veteran leadership as this team starts to become a younger team, and Phillip Rivers is that veteran leader.
Now you bring it up, the fact that, games may not be played this year, and that's what we're going to get ready and talk about of the podcast. So the NFL still plans to start the season on time. Now, the major news about this is that was kind of the breaking news story that came out before we started recording, is that the NFL is working on some sort of protective face mask, which that's not a surprise, but also in the sense that, like, it gives me a lot of optimism. Like, we all knew that the NFL had the kind of the advantage out of all of these, if you want to call it that, the advantage of all these leagues of figuring something out, because they've got so long to figure something out. But the fact that, it makes me a little bit more optimistic, because if they can find some sort of, protective, like medically protective face mask to put over the face mask they already have or something like that, it gives me a lot of optimism for what they can potentially do for the season. So I'm feeling very good about the potential of seeing the NFL, which they plan to start on time. I don't know if that's going to be a possibility, because they definitely will. I would imagine they'll have to start no matter what without fans, but I'm very optimistic about seeing football in 2020, especially with, like, not that I didn't expect them to be working on stuff like that, but just that that's being, that's the fact that that's an undertaking right now is very exciting to see.
So essentially, we could potentially see NFL players wearing race car driver helmets.
Well,
that's what I'm envisioning right now. Well, I
mean, that would be
interesting. Think about if you've gone out in public and you put on a mask. Think about how difficult it is to breathe in that mask. Now imagine running a route as a wide receiver, or getting off the line and just giving everything your all as an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman, having to wear some sort of, like, medical mask. I mean, that is going to be one of the most uncomfortable things ever. So I'm like, hey, NASCAR helmets, radios inside everybody's helmet. That way they can get the play call with social distancing. Bam.
Yeah, there you go. Everybody's going to basically look like the Fox robot. All right. That's basically what everybody's going to do. What I'm envisioning is, like, some sort of, like, I don't know if, like, cloth or, like, surgical mask thing over the face mask itself, which obviously I understand it's not right up against your face, but it's still something. That's what I'm envisioning.
You remember the old face mask Peyton Manning wore for a season because somebody hit him up underneath his face mask and broke his jaw?
Oh, the one that, like, extends down?
He had a protective thing that went up underneath the chin on his face mask. Throw that thing on there and throw a plastic coating over it. There you go.
Yeah. So definitely some optimism coming from the NFL side of things. But the major ones right now are the NBA and Major League Baseball. The NBA right now obviously suspended their season back in March, so they still have, what is it, like 15 or so games left of the regular season technically, as well as I think it is, right? 15, or is it like 10?
Something like that. Yeah, they were a couple weeks shy of ending the regular season.
Right. And then they also have the entire postseason. Major League Baseball was supposed to obviously start back in March, and they're still trying to figure things out. But starting with the NBA, there was an article by Woj from ESPN on May 12th. It says the owners left last week's meeting, so they all met last week with Commissioner Adam Silver. It centered around the idea of teams would need to be comfortable with the idea that a positive test would not stop play, which, that kind of, you don't really think about that until it's put into words, like, oh yeah, there's a possibility there will be positive tests for these teams whenever they get back into play. So
and that's what initially shut the NBA down the first time.
Right, exactly. So, like, the fact, and that's what Silver said, is that, if one positive test is going to shut everything down, then they might as well not even go down that path. So that's kind of what they're trying to convince everybody, which, I mean, like I said, makes sense, because you, like I said, you don't really think about that, but, like, yeah, there is a chance there could be positive tests and that kind of thing. Now, there has not been a formal return to play plan devised, but testing would need to be standardized, obviously, amongst all 30 teams. So they'd have to figure out a way to test everybody before each game. The main thing that I'm hearing is that they want to do some sort of, like, kind of kind of like what baseball is thinking about doing, like some sort of like, hey, we're going to put half the teams in Las Vegas, half for all the teams in Las Vegas, half for all the teams in Orlando. So everybody's, I think, done playing, at least from what I've heard, understood, at their home courts. But the main thing is that they want to be able to get tests to all 30 teams. And like I said, there's no plan in place on what a return to play would look like. All 30 teams could return to the regular season. The season could resume with just the playoffs, which, I've thought that would be a good way to go. Although the only problem with that is obviously everybody will be super rusty. So that's kind of the necessity of, hey, we have to play at least a little bit of into the regular season before we get into the playoffs. And then there's also possibility of like a play-in tournament that would give more teams a shot at the playoffs, because I didn't really think about this until, I was looking at the standings. The only team mathematically eliminated right now from the postseason is the Warriors. Everybody else, I think, has a shot pretty much from what I was.
That's surprising with it being
like,
that close to the end of the regular season.
Yeah, that's from what I saw. So I don't know if, there's probably a few teams that were literally like
Knicks. The New York Knicks aren't mathematically eliminated.
I'll double check it.
Mathematically eliminated coming into the season.
Well, right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I mean, I don't remember reading that they were. But regardless, the question would be, what would be the best way to resume the season? Because like I said, they're all obviously going to have some sort of, into the regular season, something like that. Now, my idea, B. Scott, would be you play 5 regular season games to end the season. So I know it doesn't matter. Like the divisions within the conference literally mean nothing. It's something that kind of drives me nuts. Like, why even have these? If I can't even tell you what division the Pacers are in. I know who's in. So, okay, I know they're in. I know the teams that are in their division, but I don't know.
Banners,
like,
Craig. Look at the banners. Okay, look at the banners.
Yeah, the Central Division champions. It literally means nothing. Because it would make sense if it was like some sort of like that's how they do seeding, like in the NFL, but they don't do it that way. They're just like, yeah, you could win the Central, but be like the 8th seed. So literally doesn't matter. So I was like, you play the teams within your division, then maybe play either one team outside or one team that is like your equivalent on the other side. So like the Bucks and Lakers play each other because they're the 2 1 seeds right now. So you kind of still have some marquee matchups at the end of this like makeshift into the regular season. And then you have an end of the season tournament. Every team qualifies. So you have all 30 teams in. And then it's single elimination until the field is down to 8 teams, and then the best of 3 for the quarterfinals and semifinals, and then a best of 7 for the finals. Because you do it that way, I mean, I'm selfishly wanting it to be something like that because it's going to be insane if they did something like that, just because we missed out on March Madness too, which, thinking selfishly, we didn't have that this season either. So to have some sort of tournament the NBA could put on would be pretty insane. You do single elimination down all the way to 8 teams, and then you just have best of 3s between the top 8. Because honestly, too, there's really, yes, I understand, all the cliches of, well, once you make it into the dance, who knows what's going to happen. But really,
the NBA.
The Lakers, the Clippers, the Bucks, those were the main 3 teams contending. You threw, other teams in there as well, but those were kind of, everybody was kind of just looking at what was going to happen between, the Lakers and Clippers. And then, like I said, you have the Bucks on the other side. The Raptors were a big story. So the Raptors were kind of coming out of nowhere. They were second at the time of the stoppage of play, second in the East. So that was kind of something that you didn't really expect going into the season. But yeah, those are really the 3 teams, the Bucks, Lakers, and Clippers that really, in my opinion, had a big shot of winning the NBA Finals. So, let's be realistic. Once it's down to 8 teams, there's really more than 8 teams that were vying for a spot, and then
there's not even really more than 6 or 5.
Right. So I think that's the best way to get it down to 2 teams, play the NBA Finals, and then you're good. I think that would be an electric way to bring it back, and I think it would be able to be done quickly enough to where, 2 or 3 weeks, you're done with the season. You could start building up to see, a more long-term solution for what a regular season could look like as well. Because, excuse me, I think honestly too, people have talked about and brought up the fact that like, oh, well, the longer you go, obviously you cut into the off season and cut into kind of the activities before next season. But I mean, we've seen the NBA come back strong from not starting a regular season on time before with the lockout not too long ago. So they have kind of a way to bring it back. And if you make this kind of into the season, tournament kind of work out, then you can start, after a couple of weeks, you can start considering what you're going to do for 2020, 2021.
Okay. So I'm going something kind of similar to what you are going with, except mine's going to be single elimination all the way. If you want to get something done in a matter of 3 weeks and give everybody a fair shake to get there, to be able to play a little bit and get back, you break them up, Western Conference, Eastern Conference, all in one site, or maybe to start off 4 sites. Because what I'm thinking is you take each division and you do a group play, similar to the Olympics. This is going to be Olympic style. You have a group play. The top 2 teams from each division advance on to the single elimination bracket tournament. And it's totally reseeded then. So it could be West versus East in the first round. It based off of your record and your record prior to the stoppage of play. So that is how I would seed everything. I would just at that point, get rid of conferences, and you go 1 seed all the way down to the last seed after group plays. And then it's single elimination all the way through, just like in the Olympics. We don't look at the Olympics and go, oh man, can we really say they're the gold medalists because they only won 1 game? They're the gold medalists, whether they play 1 game or they play a best of 3. So I think that's the best route to go to get things done quickly, to give everybody a chance to play, and to minimize the risk of exposure for players being around other players.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't have much of a rebuttal because my rebuttals are all for the sake of like entertainment and getting a champion crowned in a good way. But obviously, that's not the most.
Well, hey, you could even take the finals. You could say the final game is best of 3.
Yeah, I think you at least have to have.
I think every other game leading up to the finals would need to be single elimination, and then when you have your last 2 teams, it's best of 3. And I'll be totally okay with that. That way, it's not just a fluke that a team won that game. They have to prove it. Ultimately.
Yeah,
that would be good entertainment, because think about how much harder these players would play if it's single elimination.
Right.
They're going to leave everything out there. I mean, it's, think about it right now. It's like, okay, we dropped 1, but we can still win. We still have X amount more chances. We still have 3 more chances to keep winning.
Well, I mean, think about it. You have half the teams that make the NBA playoffs, and every round is a best of 7. So
forever. The entertainment factor gets sucked away nowadays because it just takes forever. It's not as – we'll get into this when we talk about The Last Dance, but it's just not the same anymore. It's just a bunch of prima donnas out there prancing around with a basketball, and it's not the edge of your seat physical type game anymore. It's basically who's going to have the ball last and, type deal. It's not – there's just, that the foul situations, there's just not, I don't know. The entertainment factor for me left a while ago. And it just, for me, the fact that their playoffs go on for about 3 months.
Yeah.
3 months. I mean, baseball only goes a month, a little over a month. That's entertainment. And they still have a best, they do best of series. But right. The NBA just drags on. So that's why I think you would see a much more entertaining playoff system if you do single right now for single elimination until you get to the finals, then best of 3.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought up baseball because there's been a few people, on my timeline, a couple, over the years that have been like, they're the ones that don't like baseball but are big basketball fans, and they talk about the length of the season. I was like, both seasons are like, if you talk start to finish, so opening day to the last game of the World Series, last game of the NBA Finals, they're both roughly 6 months. Why? Because yes, baseball plays 162 games, but they play 1 month for the playoffs, and that's a wild card round, a best of 5 AL and NLDS. You've got the 7-game championship series and the 7-game World Series potentially. And when in the NBA you have over half the teams make it, best of 7s all the way through. It used to be best of 5 in the first round,
and they play every other night,
right?
Rather than every night.
Yeah, that still is one of my biggest pet peeves. Is like I remember it was a year ago that it was the Pacers and Celtics, and they're like game 1 in Boston is
Wednesday night.
On Wednesday night, and they're not going to play again until Sunday. I'm like, they're in the same city.
Yeah.
So why do they have to
drag it out as long as we can
right.
for TV dollars?
Right. Yeah, and that's definitely not a good thing. But yeah, I mean, I think you have to have at least a best of 3 in the finals just to give, because I mean, even with the argument of the Olympics. You talk about the Olympics or single elimination all the way through. I think everyone, at least right now, knows who the best team, in the world is for, basketball, and it's Team USA, because they usually wipe the floor with pretty much everybody.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So
that's why I'm saying go with the best of 3 in the finals. But leading up to that, do we really need a best of each round?
Well, best of, definitely not each round, but I think at minimum finals, I also like to see it in the semifinals, but that's not.
I don't even know about that. I don't even know about that because the NBA would figure out some way to drag that on for a month and a half in itself.
But if you keep I guess if you're in a tournament, you're not keeping East-West, and you're going to get Lakers. Because, I mean, what I'm envisioning is you're probably, no matter what, you're probably going to get Lakers versus Clippers best of 3 in the finals. Mm-hmm. That's what you're going to get. So I was going to say.
Let's be honest. Those two are two of the best teams in the NBA.
Yeah.
By just having a full-blown tournament, you're still going to ultimately get your best teams.
Right.
You may get some upsets.
Especially in the NBA.
I think that could be really exciting because then you're going to be seeing teams squaring off in the playoffs that you wouldn't normally see squaring off. I mean, you could see the Indiana Pacers versus, I don't know, the Utah Jazz. And I think that would be an exciting matchup.
That'd be fun just because of Bogey too. So
yeah, I mean it's just, I mean obviously the NBA, when you look at all the leagues that are wanting to come back, the NBA seems to be the farthest away from actually returning to action.
Yeah. Well,
the
and
NFL
I mean
has enough time. Major League Baseball, we're going to talk about their plan here soon. They are knocking on the door of getting everything started here in the next few weeks. The NBA they don't seem like they're in any rush to return.
And I think, I don't know if it makes more sense or not, but I also think a lot of it's because of the fact that, the NFL's trying to make sure that, they have everything in place. So they have plenty of time to plan, like you said. Major League Baseball is missing their season right now. But the NBA, even though they're technically missing out, I feel like they're well, yes, we're missing out, but we're basically at the end anyway. So it's not like coming back means a month by month ordeal. We can get it as right as possible, because all we got to do is do, like we said, 5 game into the season, regular season, and then whatever you're going to do for the playoffs. So they don't really necessarily have to have this big full-fledged plan because it's of the 3, it's going to take the least amount of time to complete. Unless
they go, we're going to have the full playoffs.
Yeah, we're going to go. We're just going to pick up where we left off, guys. We're going to have every team play their full into the regular season, and then we're going to have the full playoffs. But if they do that, make it a twist. Be like, okay, we're going to have the full playoffs, but every team, because we're all in the same place, are going to play their games in succession. So as soon as game 1 ends, game 2 starts. It's going to just be a marathon. Or we're going to put,
Most of these guys have come up through AAU where that's the way it is. You finish one game and guess what? The next game's starting about 10 minutes later.
True.
So they can do it.
Yeah. Now, you brought up Major League Baseball.
I wouldn't ask them to do it, though. That's horrible. I mean,
yeah, they're like, well,
we
because
don't even ask college players to play back-to-back nights. No.
Well, because remember, initially, LeBron said he wasn't going to play unless there are fans. And they're like, hey, by the way, there's not there's not going to be fans for probably a while. And he was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. I got you now. But you brought up Major League Baseball, and there was an article by Jeff Passan originally on May 6th. The estimated plan, it was also broken by Trevor Plouffe on one of the YouTube channels and podcasts I listen to, Talking Baseball with John Boy Media. And the initial plan right now, or the plan in place right now, is for a June spring training. So about halfway through the month of June, they'll pick things up with the spring training. Now, what Plouffe said on John Boy's podcast was that it would be, in the home ballparks, basically split squad. So it's just going to be for training purposes, not, Cubs versus Red Sox, anything like that, obviously. Then they would start in July, whether it be on, July 1st or July 4th, with the regular season starting with obviously no fans in the stands. Teams could possibly have up to 50 players available, 30 active. So obviously, you would have a situation where if, let's say, one player tests positive, then you would obviously have them quarantined to bring in the next player to play in their place. You could still potentially have 80 to 100 games, and then teams would be playing in their home ballpark with no fans. So that's kind of the plan as of right now. And it's funny because when that article came out, I got super excited because I was like, oh, this actually sounds like something that could work. But what a lot of people forget too, and what makes me less optimistic, because like I said, I watched that episode of Last Week Tonight, is that like a lot of people forget that all these undertakings not only just involve the players and coaches, they involve, the event staff. And obviously you're not going to have as many, but like you're not going to have any concessions, anything like that. But you still have to have
ground crews. And
you still have to have other
and,
right. So you're still going to have other people that, are going to have to undertake this, constant testing, that kind of thing. There was a new article last week on May 11th. Owners were asking for 50-50 revenue split. This is after they agreed to prorating the players' salaries back in March. And so that, like I said, I was really excited when I saw the initial article because I was like, this plan seems really real. This plan seems like it could happen. I think it's a good plan. It sounds really concrete and safe, but I'm less optimistic because now we're at this kind of – I haven't heard anything new for a week now, and it's, I think, in large part because we're kind of at this gridlock between the owners and the players, because the owners, after saying, oh, yeah, we're just going to pay you for what the games you actually play, not the games you didn't play, which that makes complete sense. I'm for it there. But now they're like, actually, you know what? We're not going to not make a super great amount of money. We're not going to make really any money this year. So we need you guys to take a 50-50 split. And now that that's kind of a gridlock, I'm very less optimistic about what could potentially happen with Major League Baseball this season.
Yeah, this is the first thing we're hearing of players against owners and everything. So it could lead to some bigger strife. I mean, other rules came out for Major League Baseball, which how are you going to enforce these rules? No spitting. Okay, so no sunflower seeds in the dugout. No hugging, no high fives, no fist bumps, basically no physical contact. You hit a home run, you come in, put your bat away, and you sit down.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
You're not going to be able to enforce it, but also I think it's going to be kind of a self-policing thing too, because I don't think, like, how like the internet will blow up if like Chris Bryant hits a no doubt home run, off of not Chris Sale because he had Tommy John surgery, but I was trying to think of a Red Sox pitcher off the top of my head. And he goes into like high five Anthony Rizzo, and then he's like, oh crap, the like Twitter would blow up on that.
Some really good memes.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean,
I will say this: if there ends up being no baseball, this is like a dream scenario for the Houston Astros.
True. And of course, this is how it happens. They don't really get punished. They get like they get punished. At the time, I thought the punishment was okay, and then they all came off super smug, and I wasn't okay with it anymore. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, we'll see. I mean, because a lot, it's funny because I watched Trevor May on Twitch And he, when, of course there's a bunch of, 13-year-olds in a Twitch chat like, oh, you're going to hit an Astros player? And he's like, well, I'm not going to say no, because if I hit one on accident, then I'm going to be a liar. But he's like, that's obviously the only scenarios. I'm going to hit one on accident. And so it's like, but there's going to be at least one guy that hits him on purpose. And now they get off scot-free if there's no baseball. Now, granted, some of that might carry over to whenever baseball resumes. But I was like, of course, they don't take responsibility and they get off scot-free, basically, of any sort of, vigilante justice.
And it's also a good scenario for the Red Sox, too, with Chris Sale being down for the year.
Yeah, true. Well, I mean, now the Red Sox look pretty good now because they trade away Mookie Betts, who is unlikely to re-sign with them anyway. And now the Dodgers may get 0 games with them.
And Mookie Betts may end up back with the Red Sox ultimately.
Could you imagine if the Red Sox traded away Mookie Betts to the Dodgers, obviously not knowing what was about to happen, but it turns out that he doesn't play any games as a Dodger and then re-signs with the Red Sox? That would basically sum up, the last 3 years of the Dodgers' existence, or last 4 or 5 years of the Dodgers' existence. They lose the 2017 World Series to a team that was involved in one of the biggest cheating scandals. I don't want to be one of those people that's like, embellishes it in like of major American sports, but like it's up there. Then they get beat by the Red Sox, which their cheating was not as prevalent, but then they also were a buzzsaw. Like they were a buzzsaw.
They didn't even have to cheat.
Right. Yeah. They were super good that year. Like I'm not as infuriated with the Red Sox as I was with the Astros. And then, 2019 they get beat by Howie Kendrick in the NLDS, and then 2020 they don't play. They trade for Mookie Betts, who by far is going to make their team super great. They're going to have Bellinger, Betts, all these guys,
they got David Price out of it too, and
right,
he's just a solid piece.
Right. So I mean, the top 3 in your rotation were going to be Kershaw, Buehler, and Price potentially. So I mean, that's nasty. And then you don't get to play. Then I mean, they're still going to have Price because doesn't he have like a super long?
Oh, Price signed like a 20-year contract worth $500 million, and he's only on year 7 of it.
Right. So yeah, Price is going to be there.
Ridiculous.
Price is going to be in LA, which I was interested to see, or I am interested to see how he pitches, because I'm always hyped up to see how AL pitchers who go to the National League perform, because the lineups are theoretically better because the pitcher's batting. So I was excited to see him kind of get a bounce back here. But yeah, and then they end up not getting any time with Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts then re-signs with the Red Sox. That would be the most Dodgers thing to happen to the Dodgers ever. But yeah, so the whole like owners versus players thing, and that's kind of the big question. If it's safe, if the season doesn't get played, who's to blame here? I think it's overwhelmingly the owners, just because they agreed to the prorated salaries. I mean, you look at Garrett Cole, who is set to be the highest paid player this year. He would have made if they play 100 games, he would have made $22 million based on prorated, because he was going to make 36. So he would have made 22. And I don't really understand how the 50-50 works. I thought 50-50 was just like, hey, this is how much money we're going to make. Like, so I don't know if it's 50, like if Cole was going to get paid 36, now he gets paid 18, or if that means of the prorated salary, you get half of that. Obviously, if it's where he's, Cole would have made 22 and now you're asking him to take like 11, that's obviously not okay.
No, that's not okay.
But so I don't know how the 50-50 actually works, because remember, the reason why the reason why there isn't that 50-50 split already is because like baseball doesn't have a salary cap. So you see the 50-50 split in leagues like the NBA and the NFL that have a salary cap in place. Baseball doesn't have that. So yeah, I mean, it's really crazy. But yeah, I think if baseball doesn't get played, like if they come up with this plan and the plan, they're like, hey, this is going to work, we're going to get baseball back. But the owners are the reason. Now, granted, also, but then I don't know. I don't really know how you could, say the owners would. I mean, yes, the owners would look bad, but they would obviously until next season, because I mean, if games get played, there's not going to be any fans, so it's not like fans can like boycott or anything, because, or there's no really way for the fans to boycott the season if the game, or boycott Major League Baseball if games don't get played. I think there's enough time that will pass between, hey, we decided not to play the season because the owners wanted too much money, and then next season potentially, or whenever we get baseball back, to where everything will kind of die down. So I don't know if there's enough of a like backlash against the owners that they're not willing to take to not have to, to not have to pay as much money, or what. So I don't know. I obviously I think it's the owner's fault, but I don't know what the negatives are for the owners. Yes, games don't get played, but they're not making money on the games anyway. So it makes me very, very pessimistic about baseball coming back.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when you got a gridlock between owners and players, we've seen how this plays out before. You end up having a strike, and I mean, baseball at least has some time to try to figure it out, but we'll see if they can, because money talks. And I mean, it is one thing if you are asking them to take 50% of their salary, okay. But if you're asking them to take 50% of their prorated salary, that's a lot. I'm sorry, that is a lot.
Yeah,
I know, but at the same time, you can't sit there and feel too sorry for them, because $11 million is still $11 million.
Right. Yeah, but I'm glad you brought this up, because, like, yes, obviously $11 million. Because, like, first of all, because, I mean, obviously that goes kind of back to what I'm saying about the owners too, is because obviously there's going to be that contingent of fans that are like, oh, well, they're you're, oh, boo-hoo, you get to play, either you play a game and get $11 million, or you don't, or we didn't risk your health, like, oh, boo-hoo. But here's the thing is the fact that, like, the reason why these athletes, and I know but I'm just saying for the sake of it, like, the reason these guys get paid so much is that there's very few people that can do this in the world. There's many people that pop in and are trying to be Twitter trolls and are like, oh, they just play a game. Yeah, you go hit a round ball with a round stick coming at you at 100 miles an hour and see if it's just a game. Like,
it's moving everywhere.
Yeah, and it's entertainment value. These guys, once they make it to the big leagues, they don't have privacy anymore. So that's what they get paid for. They get paid for the entertainment value that they're able to provide. So that's why they get all this money. It's not the same as me going to my 9 to 5.
Actors.
Yeah. Like if I tweet something, like, it's not going to blow up as much as if Garrett Cole just tweets an emoji, and it's going to blow up just for the sake of it blowing up. So that's kind of what I wanted to get out too. But also, yes, you have the Garrett Coles of the world that would be making $11 million. So, do you have that? But then you also have, the guys that are going to be part of that 50-man team or 50-man, like inactive, roster, whatever you want to call it, that are only making, or only would have made like $75,000, which is still a lot, but you take half of that, basically, now it's $36,000. You have all these minor leaguers that are not going to get paid, like, who are going to be asked to take these risks just like the big boys, but aren't going to get paid nearly as much. You're going to have, guys who are from AA who are going to be making, even less than that. Like, they would have only made like $25,000 now. Like, everybody's like, think about this. If you were asked, like, if your boss came up to you tomorrow and was like, hey, can you like take half your salary this year? Just because we're not doing super hot, like, you wouldn't take it. And that's 100%, that's 100%, the reason why, there's kind of a gridlock right now. But the problem is that you have the contingent of people that will be like, oh, well, you just play a game, we'll just go play. Well, yeah, because you're talking about the Garrett Coles, the Mookie Betts. You're not talking about, little Joe Bob down in AA who's going to be asked to be part of the 50-man roster, who's going to make, who is going to be taken away from his family and have to play in this, quarantined baseball. and who's going to be asked to put his health at risk, for much less than what he normally would have, brought home.
Right. Oh yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's just like anybody else that if you're going to get asked to get paid half of what your contract says, you're not going to take that no matter what.
Right.
So, but yeah, it puts baseball in a tougher spot of coming back when you have owners and players at a standstill.
Yeah, because like I said, what worries me and what makes me pessimistic is because the way social media, which would be the main would be the main concern for Major League Baseball owners, like they wouldn't want some sort of backlash, but there's no way, like I said, no way to boycott it. And by the time games get started again, we'll just be so hungry for games that we won't care about the fact that games weren't played and that kind of thing. So I'm really pessimistic about the season getting started, especially because I think if it doesn't get going by June spring training, July regular season sounds about like the most perfect scenario to have a worthwhile regular season and postseason without getting too crazy. So my concern is my thought is if we don't get going by June, we're probably not going to have baseball again this year.
Right. Oh yeah, I agree.
So that was super depressing. All right, let's get into hot and cold, or hot or cold. Just a couple of questions on the hot or cold. I don't know why I keep wanting to say hot and cold. But first of all, the NBA champion, it'll kind of be the same question on both. So the NBA champion will have an asterisk on their title and this is considering what we've been talking about. Obviously, if the NBA comes out tomorrow and they're like, we're done, Lakers are the champions. Obviously, big asterisk. Yeah, big asterisk. But given what we've been talking about, will the NBA champion have an asterisk on their title? I don't think so. I think cold on this one. And it's going to kind of be for the same reason for both of these sports, is the fact that, for me, everybody's playing under the same, predetermined rules, predetermined format, that kind of thing. Nobody's being asked to do anything different. Everybody's kind of in this weird scenario together. So it's not like, the Lakers didn't have to be quarantined and have been practicing together this whole time, and the Clippers had to all be separated. That's not everybody has to play by the same rules. I think it's a little less of an asterisk no matter what for the NBA, just because we're this close to the end of the regular season and playoffs anyway, and because there really are only 4 or 5 teams that you could really say have a shot at the title anyway. So I think obviously no matter who wins whatever kind of tournament style thing they do, or whatever playoff system they do, I don't think there will be an asterisk, especially because of how late in the year we were anyway. But I don't think there should be an asterisk really on any title that's determined this year, and that's because of the fact that, we're all playing under the same conditions. I don't think there's going to be. I mean, because I look at it from this way too. If your main defense is like, well, if the Lakers win, I'm going to say there's an asterisk, but you're not going to say there's an asterisk if your team wins. So I think unless you can definitively say, hey, even if my team wins, I'm going to say there's an asterisk on the season, then there's not an asterisk in my mind.
Yeah, I think this is definitely a cold take as well. As long as there is some sort of tournament, postseason tournament, whether it be anything we've discussed or something else that hasn't been brought up by anybody, as long as there's some sort of tournament that determines who the champion is, no asterisk needed. None. I mean, we don't have an asterisk on champions from shortened seasons due to lockouts.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't remember what year that was, but we don't put an asterisk on that season. That was 2013 or 14.
They still played postseasons. We don't put asterisks on things like we did put on in 2001 when leagues shut down for a while because of the attacks on 9/11. We don't have an asterisk on that season. So as long as there's a postseason tournament played in some capacity and a champion is named that way, no need for an asterisk.
Now, same question.
Now, if there's any like regular season records broken, like team winning percentages or anything like that, yeah, you might want to put an asterisk next to that because you didn't have a full regular season.
Yeah, I think there's still going to be kind of the standard. I think there's going to be kind of adjusted standards because, like, getting into Major League Baseball, if the season is 50 games and Mike Trout hits 400, I don't think anyone's going to be like, well, Mike Trout is the all-time batting champion because he hit 450 games. Like, I don't think that's going to be, anything to really, be too concerned about. But, like, same question for Major League Baseball. Will there be an asterisk on whatever title they can determine? I'm going to say cold also, like I said before, but so long as there's at least 80 games played, because of the fact that, like, that's basically, again, why I think that if they don't get started in June or July it would have to be beginning or mid-July is like August, I think, is the latest you could start. But even then, if you think about it, August and September, you really only have time to get like 60 games in. I mean, that's literally a third of the season, when you look at it. Because the season is usually about 5 or 6 months. You talk about it's funny because, like, throughout the course of the year, you have bad months. You go through stretches where, for a given month, you might go 10-21. I remember during 2016 for the Cubs, I remember being so hyped about the season in May, and then by June was like, we're falling apart. We're not going to win anything because of how bad they played for that really entire month. So if you talk about that, I mean, if the season's 2 or 3 months anyway, and you have a bad month, it's basically like you have to have a longer season to make up for the ebbs and flows of the sport. So that's why I say at least 80 games. If they do some sort of, like, there are some things that they're going to do this year that they obviously probably are not going to do for other years. They could, I guess. Universal DH is being talked about, which I think is 100% fine. There's been talk about, obviously they're going to rearrange, or they talked about before rearranging the divisions and stuff. That won't be for more than just, these special circumstances. And then, there's been talk of doing this season, doing that, that playoff format that we talked about with the 14 teams, which, as much as I hate it, I mean, if you're going to test it out and see what the reception is, this is the year to do it. Even if that's the case, I mean, the rules are going to be decided prior to the season. So anything that happens during the season, save for, I mean, you brought up a good point, save for regular season records, which the only things that would really be, like you said, in jeopardy would be like winning percentage, batting average. Obviously no one's going to hit 75 home runs in 100 games. That would be insane. That would be almost more impressive. But again, I think if there's some like wacky sort of 40 game regular season and then you have like a tournament with every team, then I think there's an asterisk, only just because, especially if it's like single elimination or something, then it's something wacky. It's not what you're not doing what should be worthy of the World Series or of the Commissioner's Trophy or anything like that. It's just kind of a wacky, wonky thing. Like, yeah, you still won and congratulations, but it wasn't a real thing if it's like a 40 game season and then you get a 2014 tournament or something.
All right, so I'm saying this is a cold take as well, but I totally disagree with you on the whole regular season thing. I don't care if they get to a point where they have to play it World Baseball Classic style. I don't. You're still going to name who your best team was, regardless. We could look at the World Baseball Classic, and I mean, the last time it was played, was the U.S. the best team in that? Yes. Well, I don't know. I mean, even
if those teams played, I mean, because you look at the Dominican team alone, like the Dominican team year in year, the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rican teams and the U.S. are usually the three teams that are vying for that. I mean, Japan back when it first started, but not as much anymore. But they're still a worthy foe. But if you played, like, I'd be interested to look at the rosters for those teams. Like, if you played that out over a 40, like if you go into the season, if you knew, because this is what you're comparing it to, and because I agree, like if you do some sort of tournament style, we're going to bring baseball back for a month and do the World Baseball Classic, I would enjoy it. I would love that, but I wouldn't be like, that's your 2020 World Series champion, because you didn't play like it's not what the world. I don't know. It makes sense for like basketball to do something like
that kind of talk is not. That's classic. You're looking at it from a standpoint of I don't know.
Well, because like for instance, like I said, it's a cold take for both, but I think the NBA is already at the end of the regular season, so no matter what they do for a tournament, I think is fine. But if you do like for Major League Baseball, like going into the season, the Dodgers are supposed to be pretty good. But if so if they win, obviously less of an asterisk. But like if a team like, I don't know, let's say a team like
Minnesota Twins.
The Minnesota Twins won the Central. They're pretty good. But like let's say the Cleveland Indians, they win some sort of World Baseball Classic style, scenario where they played in just kind of a tournament, not even a season. Like you're not like, I don't know. I'm not
group play in that type of thing. There's a bracket.
Right. I know that. But
that's maybe you go if I don't know, but
you find a true champion like because basketball is at the stage already where you are going to get a true champion because the season's already been played. You know who the best teams are from that season even. So not even who the best teams were supposed to be. You have, the best teams. I mean, yeah, you have some chances for some anomalies because there's a chance by the time you get back to playing, KD may be back, Kyrie may be back, Steph and Clay may be back. So there's a chance, even more for like some upsets to happen with the Warriors being kind of trying to punch their way off the bottom. But like a season has already been played. You've kind of determined who the front runners are. So whatever you do is going to, most likely all cohesively come to that point. But if you have this,
that can still happen with a World Baseball.
It could, but it might not, though. But like, so you're saying if
then that's maybe how the season was supposed to play out.
The Blue Jays, who are kind of a fringe wild card team this year, if they won the whole thing, like, yeah, that would be cool. But if they won the whole thing because it was an 80-game season and they won, even if it's that wacky playoff, 14-team playoff business, like I'm fine with that. They're the World Series champions. But if you do some like little 1 month thing, like, yeah, it'll be cool, but that's not like, I mean, call it the World Series Classic, your World Series Classic champions, but you didn't play a season. You didn't determine you were the best team in 2020. You determined you were the best team in this wonky bracket, World Baseball Classic style thing that we did. Now, I would be all for that happening, like with the World Baseball Classic style, only because we didn't get one. We're not going to get one next year. When it was supposed to be played. And like I said, I'm for any kind of baseball that gets played this year, but I don't think, you're going to call it something, the World Baseball Classic, whatever you want to call it. You're not going to call it that because there's like rights and stuff. But like, you're going to call it some sort of tournament, and you're that tournament champion, but you're not the World Series champion.
Well, I guess that's where we disagree. I
guess so.
But I'm still would put an asterisk ultimately, just because I guess, okay, maybe you probably would. It's not like at this point Major League Baseball is being kept away because of the pandemic. Right now they're not coming to it. They're not playing. They're not getting ready to play because the owners and the players can't come to an agreement.
Well, they still have to figure out how like testing is going to work and stuff like that.
Right. But if they don't get to playing by the time, the beginning of June, with a training camp situation, and then the beginning of July to start playing. If they don't get through that point, then you do put it. If the owners and the players can't come to some sort of agreement to get onto the field, then you would have to put an asterisk, because that's on them. That's not on any outlying circumstances. The outlying circumstances led to that, but
I'm just saying, because like if you have an 80-game regular season, that's a good sample size of like who the best were, and then you get to that. That's when I'm be willing to say it's a World Series championship. But if it's like a World Baseball Classic style 1 month thing, then you're not, like, again, it's not the World Series. Like if it would be a season where the Cubs and Red Sox could potentially be like 0-2. All right. Are you going to say, well, we only got 2 chances to really prove ourselves and we didn't win, but you know, that was our shot at the World Series. Like you're not going to, it's just different. I think.
Well, I can tell you the Red Sox aren't making the playoffs anyways, so
true.
That wouldn't be surprising.
And I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if the Cubs are making the playoffs either.
So I mean, ultimately, the World Baseball Classic, the 2 of the best teams played for the title. One of them won. If that ends up having to be the case for Major League Baseball, and like the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Yankees and the Dodgers are going at it for the championship, I'm not putting an asterisk on that because guess what? Going into whatever season there would have been, those 2 teams were going to be considered the best of the rest.
So, yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna agree to disagree, but I just don't know that I would like you would throw a ticker tape parade, which you wouldn't be able to anyway, but like
right.
you would throw a parade for the New York Yankees like World Series title. Because that's the thing. I'm okay calling them the champion. They were the best team in the predetermined, setup this season. But they weren't the World Series champion because that's not what we're calling it. We're calling it something else. Because there's that's the thing. There's going to be an asterisk in the record book. I'm saying there shouldn't be for the NBA, or if you have 80 games in a major league season because there was a good enough sample size. I mean, there's going to be an asterisk anyway in a record book because you're going to be like, oh, they played a shorter thing because of a pandemic. But I'm saying it's basically whether or not the title is legitimate. I don't think you can call the World Series champion. I don't think you can call the New York Yankees the World Series champions if they win the World Baseball Classic style format. You can call them that if they played 100 games.
Right, and this is all just.
Oh yeah, it's all just.
Who knows? I mean, for all we know, they're going to come to an agreement. And they're going to be playing baseball at the beginning of July.
For sure, and I mean, I'll take baseball in any form.
Actually, you know what? I would even say this. I would be even okay if they looked at the schedule and they came to an agreement and they said, okay, every game that's supposed to be played after the All-Star game, that's our season.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think I definitely don't have a problem with that.
You need to move some things around to make sure that you're playing your teams in your division enough. Even if I would say if you're going to have to come back, get rid of interleague play and just play within your division and your league.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Because I mean, there are some schedules that where I think if you start in July, there's certain teams, there's a chance, the schedules are so weird, how they do it sometimes because there's a chance that the Cubs and Reds could be done playing by the All-Star break.
Yeah.
And so you don't want that, but yeah, I understand that. But yeah, I mean, we're a long ways away. We'll see. A sport that is not a long way away is NASCAR, and they are back. They came back this weekend. And they're going to have some pretty exciting things over the next 2 weeks. They're going to have 4 races in 2 weeks. It kicked off this weekend with the first of 2 races at Darlington. The race on Sunday was won by Kevin Harvick, which was actually, you know what? This is the first time, well, I mean, kind of this way for everybody, but this is the first time I've watched NASCAR in a long time. Since the Daytona 500 really was the last time I watched a NASCAR race. This year,
didn't really run many races after that.
Yeah, I was gonna say they only got 2 or 3 more races. So, but I was excited. And I think I can thank iRacing partially for making me as excited because I've enjoyed the iRacing stuff. So obviously it wasn't the same thing, but it was, I was like, okay, I can kind of get back into this, and it was something. It was sports. It was something to watch, which I think is exciting. They'll have their next race tomorrow, which is going to be really cool.
What I love about this is some people would disagree with me, but they're not qualifying. They're doing random draw. That's what they did on Sunday. And then for tomorrow night's race, they are basically inverting the finishing order based off. I don't know. It's kind of confusing, but Ryan Preece is starting first and Ty Dillon is starting second. So guys that you don't typically see up at the front are going to be starting now. It kind of shakes things up a little bit. And it's going to be a night race compared to the day race on Sunday. So the setups are going to be different. But the way things are run, it's really not much different than if an entire weekend was rained out prior to the race. So no practice, no qualifying. You basically go in, you have your setup, which you think is going to be your setup. and then there's a competition caution to make sure that everything's right with your car and to make any adjustments to the track. So that's basically how things are run. And NASCAR drivers really aren't missing a beat on this. I mean, because this is nothing new to them, because weekends get rained out all the time and they have to go just into the race completely blind with, no practice time and no qualifying. I mean, that's why they have off-season testing. That's why you see that a lot. So I think this is great. And then as far as like having no fans in the stands, the only people that's hurting are the fans and the businesses surrounding the tracks, obviously, because they rely on these races to help support them. But like Ryan Newman said in an interview, if there's 1,000 fans in the stands or one fan in the stand, I don't realize it. As fast as we're going, we don't really realize how many people are in the stands.
I think the only person that really noticed it a whole lot was like, I remember watching it on Sunday, and Kevin Harvick gets out and he's like, yeah, it's super different because I just did a burnout and like got out and it's dead silent and I don't know what to do. And it's crazy, which is obviously, they're not going to have fans in the stands for a while. But it was super exciting. Now, as much as like I'm happy to have NASCAR back, the only thing that I not necessarily didn't like, but just was like, of course, this is how it happens. It must just be, I don't know if I'm just cursed and every race I watch is won by like the same 3 drivers. But like, I was like, of course it was Harvick that won, because I feel like there's 4 drivers that always win. It's Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin, or Brad Keselowski.
That's just racing now. That's just how it is right now.
Right, and that's it's like for them to maximize the fact that they're the only sport really going on besides like UFC and things like that. Like to really maximize that, I think they would need to get like other drivers kind of in that spotlight. So it's kind of
that's why they're doing this inverted starting order, and because hey, Kevin Harvick's used to starting at the front and running at the front the entire time. Well, now Kevin Harvick's car has to work it in a certain way to be able to work through the field and lead in open air. So that makes it a lot tougher on him. So that's what they're doing. But I don't know. We'll see. I mean, ultimately, it still comes down to the teams that have the money and the teams that don't. The haves and the have-nots in racing, and that's just the way it is. The way it's always going to be. I mean, every so often you get a guy like a Matt DiBenedetto that gets up there and makes some noise, but 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a handful of drivers. And that's the way it's always been.
Right. Yeah, for sure. But I did enjoy it. I liked it. I was happy to see them back.
And it is live. And, these announcers that are doing it, they're separate studios, basically calling these races. And
that was interesting too, because you could tell like Jeff Gordon was like out of his element, because he was like, kind of just the fact that like he and Mike Joy were not in the same place and couldn't really feed off of each other.
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
I'm not saying it was bad, but it's
not like, I mean, think about it this way. I was watching an interview with the crew that calls the UFC fights for ESPN.
Right.
So the NASCAR guys, not much has to change because you don't really feed off the crowd energy. You're calling what you're seeing right then and there. The UFC guys, they were saying, one, they really feed off the crowd. They can't hear the crowd too much when they're talking, but their voices fluctuate throughout the fight and big things. So they have to be careful about yelling too loud when a big moment happens, because everybody in the arena can hear them, or especially during in-between periods where they are like breaking down what guys are talking about in their corners. They gotta be they have to realize that, wait a second, their opponent can hear what I'm saying. I might be giving away their strategy to somebody. Right. So that I would take some getting used to as a broadcaster. But the NASCAR guys, I mean, it's getting used to not having that person to play off of right there with you.
Right. Before we get into The Last Dance, I want to kind of remind you guys do some housekeeping here. You can make sure and follow us, Crash Course Podcast, on Facebook. Yeah, you can follow us on Twitter at Crash Course FM. You can hear us every Tuesday wherever podcasts can be heard, anchor.fm/Crash Course, as well as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and now also we have a YouTube channel. So if you guys are used to going to my personal YouTube to see the podcast, or see kind of the webcast of the podcast, whatever you want to call it. It is now going to be on this new YouTube channel. And so that will be on our Facebook page. I also tweeted it out. So you guys can go follow it and subscribe there. That's where the podcast is going to premiere, as well as Facebook. So it's going to go live on Facebook. It's going to go live on YouTube. And then also be on Anchor as well, and then wherever podcasts can be heard. So just want to get that out there. So go make sure you go subscribe, ring the bell, all that good stuff for the Crash Course Podcast page. And that's all you have to do. Go in, search Crash Course Podcast, and you'll be able to find it. And then, like I said, there's a link both on our Facebook page as well as our Twitter page as well. So go check that out. So The Last Dance just finished this past weekend. The last episode in the 10-part documentary just wrapped up. B. Scott, I haven't seen it yet, which don't worry about if you want to talk about anything that might be a spoiler. Of a major spoiler. The Bulls win. That's
the Bulls win.
Yeah, exactly. If you guys haven't heard, the Bulls won their 6th championship. So just to let you know,
they disbanded after that,
and they just stopped. They stopped playing basketball.
They started a rebuild that they have not finished yet.
Right? Yeah, they're still working on it. But yeah, so I haven't watched it yet, only because I want to watch it like in one big sitting, as opposed to having to wait. Like I'm of that like binge watching mentality, man. I want that feeling of like starting something new, knowing you don't have to wait, and then that feeling that you're going to get, 2 days later of like, oh, now I'm done and I don't have anything to look forward to because I already got through all of it. So I'm used to that. I'm not used to waiting week to week anymore. So I kind of waited to watch it. So I'm going to watch it eventually, probably here soon. But B. Scott,
you watch it now. It's all available.
Yeah, exactly. So B. Scott, you're going to be the only one who can give a reaction on this, so take it away.
It was actually really, really good, especially as a fan of the Indiana Pacers growing up. I think even then you were still a fan of the Bulls, except when they were playing the Pacers,
right?
Just because there was just something magical about that team.
Well, I mean, you're seeing greatness.
Oh yeah, I mean,
it's not like, it's what you should be looking at Tom Brady as, but because of like all the other stuff, you don't see him as that way. Like you'd be right. Like if Ben Roethlisberger,
maybe not even like a Tom Brady level, because I think
like if Aaron Rodgers went out and won 6 titles, like, and he may not be the most likable guy, maybe not the greatest example, but like if he goes out and wins 6 titles, everybody's kind of in awe, except if you're a Bears.
Like with like Tom Brady, the Tom Brady example, Tom Brady's his team has been caught cheating. He's been caught.
That's what I'm saying. Like that's what he.
Whereas this team was just good. They were great.
That's what I'm saying. Like it would be what you would view Tom Brady as. Who Tom Brady's considered the GOAT. We're seeing something incredible with 6 Super Bowl rings. But yeah, I mean, but it's the fact that he did like all the cheating stuff. But if you didn't have all of that, that's why I'm saying it would have been like kind of the same feeling.
And just to know the ins and outs of everything that built up to that point, like I was young and I didn't know. Obviously, I was like in elementary school at the time, and so you don't really know the whole story behind why they broke up, all the ins and outs of all those types of things. So just hearing the stories and the behind the scenes and seeing Michael Jordan's reaction to some of the things, that was pretty fun. And the fact that they got pretty much everybody involved. I mean, they even got Dennis Rodman in on the documentary, and you learn a lot more about Dennis Rodman as a person as well. It wasn't just Michael Jordan, even though it was focused around him. It was the entire team and the dynamic of the team and what this team was really all about. So it was really, really good. And the fact that Michael Jordan did not make any changes to it after viewing it before public release is great. I just think it was probably one of the better ESPN productions that I've seen in the 30 for 30 era.
Yeah,
But I think the best thing about it is the fact that all these young fans now that want to say LeBron's the GOAT have now been able to see and get a better understanding of why everybody else says Michael Jordan is the GOAT.
Yeah, now, and I'm glad you bring this up because we're going to get into a little bit of a debate here that I had back on when Crash Course first came to the airwaves on WCRD. I talked about this a little bit, but we're going to talk about it obviously now as well.
It's no debate to me.
See, and that's the thing, and maybe that's the thing. Maybe once I watch it, I will change my tune. But
it was even before watching it. It was no debate for me.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to say. So the debate here is who is better. Now we're going to have two kind of facets to this. So basically, if you were to put LeBron in MJ's era or put MJ in LeBron's era, who would be better? And then we're going to do just overall who's better. So I'm going to say now, and this is also taking into consideration that both are great in their given time periods. No one's saying that LeBron's trash or MJ's trash or anything like that. It's just because I think that's what kind of gets lost is I think the concept of, oh, well, MJ's better, LeBron's better. I think because of how we view good and bad, we think that, well, if you're not considered the best, then you're just automatically the worst. And that's not what I'm saying at all here. But so especially when you look at the era, I think if you plugged Michael Jordan into today's era, he would be fine. He would be fantastic. He would be great. I would say he would be as good, if not a little bit better than LeBron. But if you put LeBron, everybody seems to make it
more likable as well.
True. But the thing is, I think if you put LeBron in MJ's era, a lot of people, I think, and the reason I'm going to go for why LeBron is overall better, and it's the same reason as why people seem to think if you put LeBron in the era of, the Jordan rules and the Pistons who would beat you up and the Bulls who would beat you up and all that kind of thing, like LeBron is a physical specimen. He is a tank. He would be able to take whatever beatings anybody would be able to put on him, from a standpoint of, the rough and tough 90s, that kind of thing. You'd be able to put LeBron in that situation and he would be fine. So you'd be able to take both players and put them in their respective eras and they would be as good, they would be as good as they are now. I don't know if you can definitively say that, that like MJ would be better today than LeBron or LeBron would be better than MJ back in the day. But why I think LeBron is overall better, and it's not by much. It's not like I'm sitting here saying that LeBron is here and MJ's here. What I'm saying is because back in Jordan's day, you didn't see these finely tuned athletic machines that we see now in LeBron's day.
Bill Winnington's.
Like you see, like these guys have had, and it's just the benefit of 10, 20 years of guys, because I mean you see it in sports all the time now where back in Jordan's day, like people played multiple sports, people did other, you played for 4 years in college because, or two, at least two, maybe even just 2 or 3, but you still played more than 1 year in college because that was kind of the route you took. There wasn't the emphasis on, I'm going to do nothing but play basketball for 18 years, and then I'm going to play in college for 1 year no matter what, and then I'm in the NBA. It's not that 20-year goal from birth to the NBA. It wasn't the same way as it was in Jordan's day as it is in LeBron's day, where like Jordan, you might, he's playing baseball. He was, I watched, something came up on my Facebook and I rewatched Jordan's speech from, Kobe Bryant's memorial. No, what came up about Kobe Bryant? Kobe Bryant had asked him what he was thinking about at like 13, with like playing basketball. And Jordan was like, I was playing baseball. Like, that's what I was thinking about. Like, I don't think LeBron has picked up a baseball bat. I don't know if he has. Maybe he has. I don't know if he has. But, you're talking about someone who's, I think they're just people are the people are more trained, they're bigger, they're faster, they're stronger than they were in Jordan's day. So I think just from that standpoint, that's why I'm going with LeBron, because people seem to think that like you could plug. I mean, just compare the two sizes of the two guys. I mean, you look at like the definition on LeBron, and then you look at MJ. I mean, it just physically from that standpoint, like I saw a meme on Twitter of Jordan dunking over LeBron, and I was like, this looks unnatural because here's LeBron getting owned by MJ, who like LeBron's just bigger. So that's why I'm going with LeBron over MJ on who is better. Not because I think one's great and one's not great. It's just because I think, the athletes today are more equipped for basketball than they were back in Jordan's day. Not saying he had an easier path or anything like that. Just saying the athletes are different between these two eras.
I disagree. I 100% disagree. So so Michael Jordan in today's era, I think he would still be great because Michael Jordan played to play. He played to win. He didn't play to get the call, the referee to blow his whistle. And, he played right through it, no matter what. I mean, heck, one of the big things was they kept getting eliminated by the Pistons because the Pistons were the bad boys and they just beat them up. So what did Michael Jordan do in the offseason? He got more built. He got more toned. He put more muscle on so that way he could play through the Pistons and not get sore or tired or too beat up in those games. He prepared his body for those games. Nowadays, just and then if you put LeBron in the MJ era, LeBron still would have been good based on his playing abilities. But the fact that LeBron plays a lot to get the call from the referee, which a lot of superstars today do, a lot of that's just the game they play, is they play to get the call. And that didn't happen. Like prime example, you look at game 3, I believe it was game 3 of the 98 Eastern Conference Finals. And at the very end of the game, Reggie breaks free and pushes off of Jordan to get open to hit that game-winning 3. Had that been today, and that was LeBron he was pushing off of to get that separation to hit the game-winning 3, LeBron would have flopped and looking at the refs to blow the whistle. What did MJ do? MJ saved himself and tried to close out. He didn't look to the refs to save him there, whereas LeBron would have looked to the refs to save him.
Now, is that more, though, of the way that, like, is that, like, because – but if LeBron – like, if LeBron knew he wasn't going to get possibly a call, though, like, is that more on the officiating than it is – on, like, today's officiating than it is on, like, LeBron's play style? Like,
that may be. But also, back then, compared to today, they played defense. I mean, you're looking at some of these scores in the fourth quarter, and the score was 69-69, tied with like 4 minutes to go. That's what you're seeing with like 4 minutes to go in the second quarter nowadays. Guys just don't play defense. Now, LeBron plays defense, but not to the level that they were playing defense at that point in time. Can LeBron play that level of defense? I don't know. We've never had to see him play that level of defense. We've had to see him play good enough, whereas good enough back then was poor defense. So it's still tough to gauge guys between eras, but when I come down to it is Michael Jordan changed himself to play the game, to play the opponents, to get through certain opponents. He came out there even with the flu. True. And put the team on his back and won a game in the NBA championship.
True.
Then you see an image of LeBron getting a leg cramp and having to be carried off the court by his teammates.
True. I mean, that's a good.
I'm sorry, but you can't say somebody that, oh man, he's the greatest. But and actually, Michael Jordan, this came out in today. Sorry, spoiler alert. Michael Jordan did not have the flu. Michael Jordan had food poisoning.
Oh, see, that's like the third thing that I've heard, because I originally heard the flu. Obviously, it's called the flu game. That's what I originally heard. Then I heard he had a hangover. Like that's what was reported, which I was like, well, like
Well, no,
whether it's
it,
well, I
it
mean,
was
obviously
finally,
they said in the documentary that it's food poisoning, but
it
like,
was food poisoning because what it was like 10 o'clock at night. He was hungry. There was no room service available. They were calling around to different places to see what was available. And it was just one shady pizza place. They ordered a pizza, and there was like 6 guys that delivered the pizza. And Michael Jordan's trainer's thinking, he's even said this. He goes, "This could be a bad idea. This is a bad idea. Nothing good is going to come from this." He got a call at 3 a.m. from Michael, who was curled up in the fetal position in the bathroom. And everybody was saying he looked like a ghost that day getting IV fluids. And he told Phil Jackson, he goes, "I'm going to play even if it means I'm just a decoy out there." But for him to go out and play the way he did in that game. So he said, we'll still call it the flu game because I had flu-like symptoms, but it was actually food poisoning.
Yeah, I wonder did they, obviously they didn't name the place, did they, or did they?
No.
Yeah,
No.
I was like,
I was like, "Oh, you gonna name that place? Are you gonna name it?"
I would
It
be.
was in Salt Lake City, so no. but at the same time, I mean, that's what we see when we think of Michael Jordan. We see him that way. We see him playing through these things. We see him playing through tragedies. His father dying, his father being murdered, essentially. We see him playing when super sick. We see him when his teammates are down, him just taking the team on his shoulders and at an older age and just carrying them. And now we've seen LeBron carry his team as well. But, I mean, you know what? I'm not even going to make an argument about these super teams because technically when you look at that Bulls team, that was technically a super team.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. That was Dennis Rodman, Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, there was your big 3. And then you had underrated guys like Steve Kerr, Luke Longley, Tony Kukoc. So,
I agree.
Ultimately, because of the way Michael Jordan played and how he played through things, I am saying Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time. That doesn't take anything away from LeBron. LeBron is one of the greatest to play the game, but when you rank them out, I'm putting Michael Jordan ahead of him just because of the physicality and how it was war. It was pure war. And then how he came in to a franchise that was a joke, and he turned them into one of the greatest dynasties ever. I mean, in the documentary, you learn when he came to the Chicago Bulls, at halftime, players were drinking beer, doing drugs, smoking cigarettes that they got off the coaches, and nobody really cared. And he got there and kind of started changing that around, and then they got Doug Collins in as their head coach for 1 year, and he really turned things around. And then they got Phil Jackson. I didn't know that. I mean, I was too young, but Phil Jackson, I guess I didn't realize Phil Jackson was the coach throughout all those championships.
Yeah.
And it's just when you look at that and you look at the fact that, I mean, he was a team guy. He wanted to make sure that the team was held together, and he didn't jump around a bunch, I mean,
yeah, I think where you can kind of, sorry to cut you off. I think where you can kind of find the difference too is the fact that, like, because I think both came into somewhat similar situations with terrible teams that they made, like took to the next level with, LeBron. Because you can look at that LeBron Cavs team that he took to the finals against the Spurs that first go around, and it was not a pretty story. But I think what you kind of, and again, that's why it's 2 different eras, and you try to get away from looking at the teams that are around these 2 guys too, which not to belittle any of those facts, but also the fact that, like, I think where LeBron and MJ split are, MJ did, everything with the team that he had around him, and they built a team around him. The Cavaliers refused to do that. Then you take in the fact that the Celtics made a super team, then you kind of feel like you have to create a super team, and it's kind of like a product of the times, and that's why you get jumping around and all that stuff, and the flopping and the officiating, because the game has changed from that aspect than it was when Jordan was there.
The flopping. Come on.
That's what I'm saying. Like that is
so bad that the NBA is starting to say we're going to call that a foul.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So, like the league has changed into flopping and super teams when it wasn't that when Jordan played, and that's kind of what sets it apart too.
I'll say, the officiating is much more ticky-tacky these days than it was then. But the fact that, heck, MJ would have been called for a lot of fouls, and he had a lot of fouls called, in his favor nowadays, the way a lot of teams played against him. Yes. But LeBron sometimes goes out and is looking for the call. He's looking to get that call.
True.
And Michael Jordan was never looking to get that call. He would get bludgeoned. And there was even in the documentary, they're talking about one of the things that against the Pistons, he had to tell his teammates, don't let them know that it's upsetting you. Don't look to the ref to help you out. Don't look back at them. Get up and keep playing. And that's what they did. And that ended up ultimately helping them overcome the Detroit Pistons. Whereas LeBron looks for the call. He spends more time, rather than keeping playing, he's talking to the ref like, why didn't I get that call? Or crying to the ref. You never saw that from MJ. If you did, it was because it was something blatant that was missed. Like he got clocked in the head on an intentional punch thrown, those types of things.
I'm with you.
That's where I'm grading it out. But both of them are two of the best to have ever played the game. I just think Michael Jordan right now is a step above LeBron because of some certain factors.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Well, that will do it for this week's edition of the Crash Course Podcast. Again, you can follow us at Crash Course FM on Twitter, Crash Course Podcast on Facebook. Also, new YouTube channel, Crash Course Podcast. That's on our Twitter, pinned on our Twitter, as well as our Facebook page as well. So go ahead and check that out. And then you can hear the podcast every Tuesday, wherever podcasts can be heard, anchor.fm/Crash Course, as well as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. That's where you can find the Crash Course Podcast. Next week is going to be interesting because there will be a podcast for you guys, but there will also be kind of a separate thing that B. Scott and I are going to be doing on the YouTube channel. We are going to be watching the last few laps of last year's Indy 500, because of course this weekend would have been the Indy 500. So we're going to do that. So that'll be a lot of fun. So stay tuned for that. I hope you guys are excited. That'll be next week. But until then, have a good week, everybody.